What if I told you that the most dangerous curse doesn't come with a pentagram, a chant, or a shadowed figure under a full moon? What if I told you it comes wrapped in politeness, disguised as generosity, and walks through your front door with a smile? The most powerful form of spiritual manipulation doesn't announce itself. It blends in, and before you even realize it, you've opened the door to something dark. You didn't get hexed. You accepted it. You welcomed it. That's how witchcraft works in the real world. It's psychological, it's energetic, and it's strategic. Not all gifts are blessings. Some are bindings, and too many people are asleep to that truth. See, I'm not just talking about physical witchcraft. I'm talking about spiritual infiltration, the kind that looks like a gift but is really a loaded weapon. It's manipulation in disguise, energy exchange under false pretenses. You don't need a spell to be cursed. All you need is to say yes to the wrong energy, at the wrong time, from the wrong person. Because energy doesn't lie, but people do. So the moment you start accepting things blindly, you open yourself up to a world you don't fully understand. The first dangerous gift is a favor with strings. Ever had someone do something nice for you and you felt it in your gut? That weird tension, that unspoken expectation, that wasn't kindness. That was a transaction. And let me be very clear, every time you accept something tied to guilt, to manipulation, to silence, you're not receiving generosity. You're signing a spiritual contract. You're agreeing to a debt you didn't ask for, and it will be collected later. That's how control starts. That's how witchcraft operates things. Not through the supernatural, but through the subtle. The second gift to reject is sympathy from someone who doesn't respect you. Understand this: sympathy can be used as a weapon. It's the perfect mask for dominance. That person who pities you while quietly undermining you. They're not helping. They're placing you below them. They want to keep you there. Because if you accept sympathy from someone who disrespects your strength, you slowly start to believe you're weak. That's not a gift. It's a trap. It steals your confidence one soft comment at a time. And before you know it, you're shrinking in your own skin. That's spiritual sabotage. That's manipulation masked as care. The third dangerous gift. Information you didn't ask for, especially about yourself, from people who shouldn't have access. That friend who says, "I heard something about you, just wanted to warn you." You think they're protecting you, but often they're injecting poison. Their gift is gossip, dressed as concern. Their motive is chaos. And once you let it into your mind, it plants doubt. Suddenly, you're looking over your shoulder, questioning your own reputation, your own circle. That's not protection. It's confusion. And confusion is the open door for spiritual attack. The second you don't trust your own judgment, you've handed the reins to someone else. Number 4 is praise from a source that envies you. And this one's slick, because we all crave validation. But when someone who secretly resents you starts complimenting you, especially in public, you better sharpen your awareness. That's not admiration. That's surveillance. They want to get close enough to study your weakness. Their compliments are strategic. They're watching you soak in their words, so they can find where your ego lives. And once they know where you get your emotional oxygen, they'll choke you right there when it matters most. Praise is powerful, but when it comes from poisoned lips, it becomes a spell. And if you let your guard down just because someone sounds sweet, you invite betrayal disguised as love. And the final dangerous gift: you should never accept pity packaged as prophecy. Be careful with people who speak over your life without discernment. The ones who tell you, "I just feel like something bad is going to happen," or "I had a dream about you, and it wasn't good." That's not insight. That's influence. You're being programmed. That's a spiritual implant. An idea they want you to absorb and carry like it's your truth. Don't accept every word spoken in spiritual tones as divine. Some people use fear as a tool. They plant doubt, they seed anxiety, and they call it warning, to give it legitimacy. But it's not a prophecy. It's a projection. And if you accept it, if you start shaping your behavior around it, you've just allowed their fear to hijack your future. So why does this matter? Because spiritual warfare isn't theatrical. It's tactical. And it doesn't need candles and spells to destroy you. All it takes is one wrong agreement, one unguarded moment, one yes to the wrong offer. That's how witchcraft starts. Not in darkness, but in your willingness to let the wrong energy sit too close to your soul. You have to be ruthless with your peace. You have to be strategic with your spirit. You have to learn to block what looks harmless but feels off. If your intuition whispers, "No, listen." Because every time you silence that voice, you step further from your protection. That's your shield. That's your firewall. Stop letting people gift you chaos wrapped in charm. Not everything that shines is safe. Protect your energy. Guard your spirit. And remember this, you don't have to be mystical to defend yourself from witchcraft. You just have to be awake. You see, people think witchcraft shows up with a broomstick, a chant, or a cauldron bubbling over fire. That's the Hollywood version. Dramatic, theatrical, and completely misleading. Real witchcraft, the kind that infiltrates your life without you even realizing it, is much more subtle. It's psychological. It's emotional. It's energetic. It walks into your space looking like support. It hides behind gifts, sweet gestures, spiritual language. You won't see it because it's not meant to be seen. It's meant to be felt. Just enough to confuse you, not enough to alarm you. That's how it works. Witchcraft today looks like emotional manipulation. It looks like someone mirroring your needs just to get closer. It looks like a spiritual mask worn by someone with hidden motives. They don't need spells. They don't need potions. All they need is your permission, your acceptance of what they offer. Because the second you accept it without discernment, without listening to your gut, you let them in. That's how people hand over their power. Not in dramatic battles, but in soft compromises. The enemy doesn't need to break the door down if you open it yourself, and we do that all the time, especially when something looks harmless, generous, holy. But energy doesn't lie. If you're paying attention, your body will tell you. Your instincts will flare up. But we've been conditioned to ignore those signals because they don't come with proof. We wait until it's obvious. Until we're drained. Until our peace is gone. But by then, the damage has already started. This is why you have to stop associating danger with drama. The real threat isn't always loud. It's quiet, calculated, and wearing a smile. It knows how to speak your language. It knows how to offer what you want to hear. And if you're not grounded, if you're not alert, you'll let it in thinking it's help when it's actually harm. That's spiritual warfare today. It's not external. It's internal. It's energetic. And if you want to stay protected, you better learn to read what's behind the gift. Not just the gift itself. This is where people get trapped, thinking that just because someone gives you something, it must come from a good place. But not all gifts are blessings. Some are traps with a ribbon on top. When you receive something, anything, you're not just taking the item, you're accepting the intention behind it. And if that intention is impure, manipulative, or controlling, you've just made an agreement without even realizing it. That's how spiritual contracts get signed. Energetically, there's no paper trail, no handshake, just a silent exchange of power. And the moment you say yes without discernment, you've handed over a piece of your authority. Think about it. That person who suddenly becomes overly generous, who insists on helping you in a way that feels forced. They're not giving from the heart. They're investing in a debt. And they will collect. It might not be immediate. It might not even be direct. But eventually, they'll make you feel like you owe them. And when someone thinks you owe them, they think they own a piece of you. Your time, your attention, your obedience. That's not a gift. That's spiritual currency being used to buy access to your peace. You've got to start asking, what does this gift cost me? What am I agreeing to, spiritually, emotionally, energetically, by saying yes to this? Because every time you receive something that your spirit quietly resists, but your mouth says thank you, you're not just being polite. You're betraying your intuition. You're ignoring that inner warning system that's trying to protect you. People use generosity as a weapon all the time. They use it to create leverage, to position themselves in your life in ways that let them pull strings later. And when you try to walk away or say no in the future, they remind you of what they gave. That's how control creeps in. Through gifts that were never meant to be free, they were investments in your compliance. So don't be fooled by pretty packaging. A gift is only as pure as the intention behind it. If it feels heavy, unclear, or calculated, leave it. You're not rude for rejecting what doesn't sit right with your soul. You're wise. Because nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth sacrificing your spiritual boundaries. There's something incredibly toxic about the kind of person who shows up with gossip wrapped in concern. The ones who say, "Hey, I just thought you should know," and then proceed to drop a verbal grenade into your mental space. You didn't ask. You didn't invite it. But now they've planted it. That's not a warning. That's spiritual sabotage. It's masked as care so you'll lower your guard, so you'll think they're doing you a favor. But make no mistaking, when people deliver information that disrupts your peace with no solution, no context, and no accountability, it's not insight, it's infection. You have to start understanding that information is energy. Words carry weight. And when someone brings something to you that wasn't meant for your ears, that you didn't ask for, they're not just handing you details. They're handing you anxiety, and you absorb it, even if you don't want to. Suddenly you're second-guessing people, questioning loyalty, overanalyzing conversations. Your peace is gone and your focus is fractured. That's not protection, it's poison. And the worst part, you think that person's on your side because they came to you first. But in reality, they're watching your reaction. They're feeding off your response. That gift of information is their way of gaining access to your mind. You need to be ruthless with who gets to speak into your life, especially when it's unsolicited. Because some people don't want to protect you. They want to program you. They want to insert a narrative that benefits them, not you. And when you start behaving differently, when you start distancing yourself from others based on one-sided intel, you're not standing in discernment, you're operating under influence. That's how spiritual infiltration works. It doesn't always come from outside your circle. Sometimes it hides inside it, using trust as a gateway. And if you don't protect your mental space with the same intensity you protect your home, you'll let in voices that sound helpful but are actually there to unbalance you. So don't accept information just because it comes in a soft tone. Ask yourself, does this empower me or does it confuse me? If it doesn't bring clarity or peace, it's not yours to carry. Drop it, reject it, because you don't need a mouthful of gossip to be wise. You need a mind guarded by discernment. Compliments can be a currency of deception, and most people never see it coming. When someone who has always kept a subtle distance suddenly starts showering you with praise, especially in public, your first instinct might be to feel flattered. You think you're being seen, acknowledged, appreciated. But here's the truth: most people missee flattery can be a tactic, not a truth. When it comes from the wrong source, it's not admiration, it's surveillance. They're not applauding you to lift you up. They're applauding you to get closer, to learn your rhythm, to find out where your emotional buttons are. Because once they figure that out, they know exactly where to strike. People who secretly envy you won't attack you directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, they'll smile. They'll support you out loud and study you in silence. Their compliments are strategic. They want to know what you need to hear so they can use it against you later. That's how spiritual manipulation operates. It flatters you into dropping your guard. And the moment you do, they gather data, your triggers, your insecure drives you, what scares you, because at the right moment, that very same person will weaponize everything they praised. And the danger in all this, you let them in, you trusted their words, you leaned on their approval. So when they pull back, when they turn cold, when they suddenly disappear or twist on you, it cuts deeper. Because they studied you, and you gave them access. That's why discernment isn't just about identifying threats. It's about recognizing fake affection. Not every smile is sincere. Not every compliment is clean. Sometimes people praise you just to tether your ego to their presence. And once they've got that hook in, they'll yank it when you least expect it. You've got to stop measuring people by what they say when you're shining. Pay attention to how they behave when you're struggling. That's when the truth shows. And if someone's compliments always feel a little too calculated, a little too timed, trust your gut. Your intuition isn't being dramatic. It's being protective. Don't trade your discernment for dopamine. Because flattery might feel good, but when it's laced with envy, it's just a setup waiting to happen. There's a specific kind of darkness that hides inside spiritual language. The person who looks you in the eye and says, "I just felt something in my spirit about you." Or, I had a dream, and it wasn't good, and they present it like a divine warning. But let's be honest, was it divine? Or was it projection? Was it their intuition or their insecurity? Because not every word wrapped in spiritual packaging comes from truth. Some of it is fear, some of it is control, and some of it is just plain manipulation dressed in holy robes. This is where it gets dangerous. When someone claims to speak over your life, they are planting seeds. And if you're not strong enough to reject it, those seeds take root in your mind. You start thinking, maybe they're right. Maybe something bad is coming. Maybe I should hold back. Maybe I shouldn't trust that person. Maybe I shouldn't take that risk. And that maybe becomes a block. It delays your progress. It clouds your clarity. That is not prophecy. That's programming. You've got to understand something very real. Hearing words have power, especially when you let them in. And just because someone has spiritual vocabulary doesn't mean they have spiritual authority. Discernment is key. Ask yourself, why are they telling me this? What is the fruit of this message? Does it bring clarity, peace, or does it leave you anxious, confused, hesitant? Because if it's not peace, it's not from God, period. The worst part is you'll think they care. You'll think they're warning you out of love. But often, they're projecting their own limitations onto you because your courage threatens them. Your growth makes them uncomfortable. So they dress their fear as divine foresight and hand it to you like a gift. But what they're really trying to do is contain you. This is why you cannot allow every voice access to your spirit. You cannot allow just anyone to speak into your life, no matter how spiritual they sound. Protect your atmosphere, because once someone convinces you that danger is around the corner, you'll live like it is. You'll shrink. You'll delay. And that's exactly what they wanted, to dim your fire just enough that you no longer intimidate them. Witchcraft doesn't always look like a curse. Sometimes it looks like a concern. Sometimes it sounds like a whisper of warning. But if it doesn't come with love, with peace, with clarity, it's not protection, it's possession. So block it, reject it, and never forget, just because it comes in a soft voice doesn't mean it's safe. The real threat is never the obvious one. The real threat is always dressed up, softened, made palatable, even attractive. It comes wearing your favorite tone. It mimics support. It imitates sincerity. But behind it, there's another agenda entirely. One of the most dangerous forms of manipulation is praise. But not just any praise. The kind that comes from someone who doesn't actually want to see you rise. Someone who's been watching you, silently competing with you, possibly even resenting you, but suddenly they're cheering for you publicly, and your ego laps it up like water in a draught. But understand this, people who envy you don't always act like your enemies. Sometimes they act like your biggest fans. Why? Because they've realized something powerful. If they can't beat you, they'll try to get close enough to study you. They'll flatter you so they can figure out where your validation lies. They want to know what makes you feel seen, what makes you feel appreciated, what compliments make you lower your guard. Because once they know what feeds your spirit, they know where you're vulnerable. And if you're not aware, if you're not grounded in who you are, they will use that against you. Strategically, subtly, destructively, you might think. But it's just praise. What harm could it do? A lot. Because if the foundation of your confidence is built on other people's opinions, you are now emotionally dependent. And if that person can lift you up with their words, they can just as easily tear you down with their silence. Or worse, with silence at just the right time, when you need support, when you're about to make a big move, when you're about to risk something meaningful. They'll pull back, just enough to make you doubt yourself. That doubt, that hesitation, that's the result of giving someone emotional leverage they never earned. This is spiritual warfare at its most deceptive. You think you've gained an ally, but what you've actually done is invite a saboteur into your inner circle. And they don't need to attack you directly. They just need to study you long enough to know when to step back and let you self-destruct. Their goal was never to help you rise. It was to get close enough to feel like they had influence over your momentum. And once you rely on their praise, you've given them the remote control to your confidence. They can mute you. They can fast forward your fall, all with a look, withheld word, a calculated absence. Praise, when sincere, is beautiful. But when it's rooted in envy, it becomes poisonous. Because envy doesn't always show up as hate. Sometimes it shows up as obsession, sometimes it shows up as fascination, and if you mistake it for admiration, you won't see the hit coming. You'll be too busy enjoying the applause. That's how spiritual manipulation gains its footing, by making you crave external approval more than internal alignment. I've seen this too many times. A woman starts to rise, she's finding her rhythm, she's becoming visible, she's confident, and then someone enters her space, all charm, all sweetness, all, "I've always believed in you," and slowly, that person becomes her mirror. They start reflecting back only what they want her to see. Approval when it suits them, silence when it doesn't. And just like that, her power becomes dependent on their reflection. That is not friendship, that is not support, that is control, that is witchcraft dressed as warmth. You have to get brutally honest with yourself, who's around you clapping just a little too hard. Who's praising you only when it makes them look good? Who gets louder when you're down and quieter when you're winning? These are signs, not of love, but of manipulation. And you better be paying attention, because the people who praise you publicly can still resent you privately. And the ones who need everyone to know they support you are often the same ones who need you to need them. Real support doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need credit. It doesn't need to attach itself to your glow. Real support says, "I see you," and doesn't make it about them. But fake support, it's performance, it's positioning, it's spiritual politics. And if you accept it blindly, if you let it into your system, you will become addicted to their applause. And addiction is just another form of control. What makes this dangerous is that it's not obvious at first. It feels good, it feels affirming, it feels like connection. But slowly, it becomes dependency. You start looking over your shoulder, wondering why they didn't comment this time, why they didn't respond like before, why the energy shifted. That mental space, that distraction, that's not accidental, that's the outcome. That's the spiritual consequence of letting someone into your validation loop who never had pure intentions. And don't be fooled. These people are skilled. They're intuitive. They know exactly when to say what you want to hear. They will wait until the moment you're most unsure, most stretched, most ambitious, and they will drop that perfectly crafted praise bomb. Just enough to keep you tethered to them emotionally. And when the time is right, when it suits them, when your growth becomes inconvenient, they'll shift, and you'll feel it. But by then, you're hooked. So what do? You step back. You assess the intention behind the compliment. You watch patterns, not performances. You check your spirit, because your intuition always knows. It may not give you a full report, but it'll whisper, something's off. And when it does, listen. Trust your inner warning system more than you trust public approval, because your peace is never worth the price of someone else's false praise. Don't let your power be managed by someone else's mouth. Don't let your fire be fueled by envy disguised as encouragement. And don't confuse obsession with admiration. People will praise you just enough to feel close to your light. But not everyone who gets close to the flame wants to keep you burning bright. Some are just waiting for the right moment to snuff it out. So protect your glow, guard your spirit, and understand this: not every compliment is a gift. Some are keys. And if you're not careful, you'll hand them over to someone who never wanted to see you free. When someone walks into your space and starts speaking about your life with boldness and certainty, you better pause. Especially when you didn't ask for it. Because there's a massive difference between spiritual insight and spiritual interference. And too often, people confuse the two. Just because someone has spiritual language doesn't mean they have spiritual integrity. Just because they speak like a prophet doesn't mean they're not projecting their own fears, their own doubts. Oh, people think spiritual warfare looks like a horror movie, that it's loud, violent, explosive. But the real battle, it's quiet, it's calculated, it's subtle, it's psychological. And it doesn't need to shout because it's smart enough to whisper. The enemy doesn't always break in. Sometimes, he gets invited in because you were too distracted, too trusting, too busy chasing peace without protecting it. That's how it starts. Not with chaos, but with compromise. One small yes to something that felt off. One ignored gut feeling, One moment where you silenced your intuition to keep the peace or avoid conflict. And just like that, a foothold is established, a spiritual crack is formed, and the infiltration begins. This isn't about ghosts or hexes. This is about influence, about emotional access. The enemy works through people, through energy, through seemingly harmless choices. You're not going to see flashing lights. What you're going to see is exhaustion that comes out of nowhere, anxiety that makes no sense, a fog that creeps in when everything was just starting to go right. And you'll question yourself instead of questioning the energy you've allowed near you. That's the trap. You get so used to looking for external threats that you miss the internal ones, the ones you let sit at your table because they smiled, because they sounded spiritual, because they looked safe. And what makes it so dangerous is that it operates in your blind spots. It knows you're a good person. It knows you're kind. It knows you want to see the best in people. So it uses that against you. It waits for the moment you're emotionally vulnerable, when you're craving connection, when you're trying to heal, and it sends a person or an offer that feels perfect on the surface but costs you your peace under the surface. It's spiritual bait. And if you bite without discernment, you'll get hooked into something you can't easily untangle. The most tactical moves aren't forceful. They're patient. Spiritual attacks today don't always come through aggression, they come through slow erosion. The gradual breakdown of your clarity, your confidence, your discernment. That's how people get spiritually hijacked without even realizing it. They think, this person helped me, or this seemed like a blessing. But in reality, it was a trade. You gave up your inner authority for temporary comfort. You accepted the gift, the word, the favor, but didn't realize the price. So when you start feeling disconnected from yourself, from your purpose, when your clarity starts slipping, you have to asking, what did I let in that didn't belong? Who did I give access to that wasn't qualified? What energy did I align with that felt nice but wasn't right? Because spiritual warfare today is about access. Who has it, why they want it, and what they plan to do with it once they get it. This is why you need to be sharper. Not colder, sharper, not mean, aware. Because everything spiritual isn't sacred. And everything soft isn't safe. If you don't know how to guard your space, you'll spend your life trying to recover your energy from battles you never saw coming. That's not bad luck. That's unguarded living. You don't need fear to be protected. You need strategy. You need emotional discipline. You need spiritual discernment. And you need to stop expecting danger to look dangerous. It rarely does. It looks helpful, familiar, comforting, until it's not. And by the time you realize it, you've already paid in peace. So don't wait for it to get obvious. Protect yourself early. That's how you win the fight. Before it even begins. Your intuition is not just a feeling. It's your built-in security system. It's your spiritual radar, your internal firewall. And yet, most people ignore it because it doesn't scream. It whispers. It nudges. It speaks in discomfort, in gut pulls, in that subtle tightness in your chest that says, something here isn't right. But we override it. We rationalize it. We silence it with politeness, with fear of being wrong, with a need to be liked. And every time you do that, every time you ignore what your intuition is trying to protect you from, you give permission for the wrong energy to get closer. How many times have you looked back and said, I knew it. I just knew something felt off. That wasn't hindsight. That was foresight. That was your intuition doing its job. But instead of trusting it, you prioritized logic, appearances, expectations. That's where most people lose the battle, not because they weren't strong enough, but because they didn't listen soon enough. And that delay, that hesitation, it cost them time, energy, clarity. Your intuition is not emotional weakness. It's survival intelligence. And in the world we live in, where manipulation is dressed up as kindness and control is disguised as care, you better be using every bit of that intelligence. You don't need someone else to confirm what you already feel. You don't need validation for protecting your peace. If something feels wrong to your spirit, it is wrong, even if you can't explain it, even if no one else sees it, because your intuition doesn't operate on what's visible. It operates on truth, and truth is rarely loud. It doesn't always come with proof, but it's consistent. It sits with you, it follows you, and the longer you ignore it, the louder the consequences become. This is why so many people end up entangled in situations that drain them, because they sensed it early on. They just didn't honor the signal. Maybe it was a relationship, a conversation, an opportunity that looked perfect but felt off. And instead of walking away, they leaned in. Because it made sense on paper. Because it looked right from the outside. But your spirit isn't fooled by appearances. It doesn't care about aesthetics. It cares about alignment. And when there's misalignment, it speaks, not to punish you, but to protect you. Start normalizing this. I don't know why, but my gut says no. That's a full sentence. That's enough. You don't owe anyone an explanation for why you're choosing peace, why you're stepping back, why you're declining the offer, leaving the room, cutting off the conversation. You don't need to justify spiritual self-defense. You just need to practice it. Because your intuition, it's your edge. It's what separates you from the people who constantly get played, missiled, manipulated. It's what keeps you grounded when everything looks good but doesn't feel good, and when you build a life that honors that voice. When you start responding to that whisper instead of waiting for it to become a scream. You stay ahead. You stay safe. You stay free. So train yourself to listen faster. Not just when something is obviously wrong, but when something is almost right. Because almost right is still wrong. And the sooner you stop second-guessing that inner signal, the less damage you'll have to repair later. Your intuition was built for the very battles you haven't even seen yet. Trust it, it's your first defense, and sometimes your only warning. Awareness is everything. It's the difference between walking into a room and commanding your space, or walking in and giving your power away before you even sit down. And the hard truth is this: most people don't lose their strength because they're weak. They lose it because they're asleep. Spiritually, emotionally, mentally, they move through life on autopilot, accepting every word spoken to them, every invitation, every connection, without ever asking the most critical question: why is this being offered to me? That question alone could save you from years of spiritual entanglement. The enemy doesn't need to storm in through the front door. He just needs a sliver of access. One unguarded moment, one unchecked relationship, one false assumption that someone clapping for you is someone rooting for you. And when you're not aware, when you're not tuned in, you'll start handing over your energy one conversation at a time. Because that's how this works. It's not some giant, dramatic collapse. It's erosion, subtle, quiet, invisible, until one day you look around and realize you don't feel like yourself anymore. You're second-guessing everything. You're emotionally exhausted. You're off track. And you don't even know where it started. Awareness isn't about paranoia. It's about protection. It's about being so grounded in who you are, so in tune with your own energy, that nothing can attach to you without your permission. But to get there, you have to be awake. You have to stop blindly accepting everything that sounds good, looks good, or feels good in the moment. Because some of the most dangerous things you'll ever encounter won't come looking like threats. They'll come looking like opportunities, like healing, like love. And if you're not paying attention, you'll take the bait. This is why spiritual warfare is real. Not in the fantasy sense, not in the way it's been dramatized, but in the very real, tactical sense of people using words, energy, gifts, and influence to manipulate your path. That's warfare. It's not about demons in the dark. It's about distractions in daylight. The wrong voice can detour you for years. The wrong compliment can hook your ego. The wrong favor can tie your hands. And every time you're unaware of what's really happening, you give them a little more control. But when you're aware, truly aware, you start to see the difference. You notice that some people only check in when they want information, not when they want connection. You realize that some compliments are rehearsed, that some concerns are actually control tactics, that the person speaking prophecy over your life might just be projecting their own limits. Awareness lets you read energy, not just words. It sharpens your instinct. It strengthens your discernment. It trains you to ask, what's the motive here? What's the energy behind this? And that changes everything. Because once you start asking those questions, you stop falling for the surface-level charm. You stop letting people get close just because they sound spiritual or seem supportive. You stop accepting energy into your space because it's familiar. You start choosing alignment over attachment. You start walking in clarity instead of confusion, and people won't like it. They'll call you cold, guarded, distant, but what they're really saying is, you're no longer easy to access. And that's the point. You don't owe anyone access to your spirit just because they showed up politely. You don't have to say yes to every invitation. You don't have to receive every word spoken over you, because awareness means ownership. You own your space, your time, your energy, and the moment you start acting like it, you shift the dynamic. You become unshakable. And that's what spiritual protection looks like in real life. Not burning sage or casting out shadows, but mastering your boundaries and saying, this energy doesn't belong here. Think about it. How many times have you sensed something wasn't right, but you kept going because it was easier? Because it looked harmless. Because you didn't want to make things awkward. That's the price of being unaware, and it's a heavy one. You end up drained, confused, distracted from your path. But when you're aware, you move differently. You speak with authority. You protect your mind like it's sacred ground. Because it is. You watch who you let in. Not because you're afraid, because you've learned. You've seen what happens when you don't. And here's what people don't tell you. The more aware you become, the more spiritually sensitive you get. You'll start picking up on things other people miss. You'll feel it in your body, in your energy. You'll walk into a room and know who's genuine and who's not before a word is spoken. That's not paranoia. That's power. But that level of awareness doesn't come from reading a book or hearing a sermon. It comes from choosing to wake up every day, to examine your thoughts, your connections, your choices, to ask, is this serving my purpose or stealing from it? Awareness isn't just a mindset, it's a lifestyle. It's in how you walk, how you respond, how you decide. You start noticing when your peace drops, when your body tenses, when your spirit withdraws. That's your inner system going, pay attention. But if you're not tuned in, you'll override it. You'll say yes when your spirit said no. You'll stay when you were supposed to leave. You'll tolerate what you were supposed to reject. And then you wonder why you're off balance, why your energy feels invaded, why nothing seems clear. It's because you stopped listening to your warning system. You traded awareness for convenience. But convenience will cost you clarity every single time. You need to be dangerous in your awareness, sharp, discerning, calm, but unshakable. That's the kind of presence that protects itself. Because when you're aware, you can still be kind. But you're no longer Norvi. You can still be open. But you're not exposed. You don't walk into rooms blindly anymore. You scan the energy. You test the fruit. You observe the patterns. Because the truth is, real awareness doesn't just keep you safe. It keeps you powerful. And that's how you block witchcraft before it starts. You don't wait for the chaos. You don't wait for the fallout. You don't wait for someone to prove to you that they were a threat. You sense it. You stop it. Early, quietly, without fanfare. Because you were aware enough to recognize that just because something is offered to you, doesn't mean it's meant for you. Just because someone sounds good, doesn't mean they are. Just because it comes wrapped in love, doesn't mean it's pure. And just because they say it's a gift, doesn't mean it's not a curse. Stay sharp. Stay awake, because awareness will protect what can't reach fast enough. It's your first defense, your final filter, and your daily discipline. Use it, train it, honor it, and never, ever silence it for the sake of comfort. Because comfort won't protect you, but awareness will. Every single time. So here's the truth you can't ignoring. Not everything that looks like a gift is a blessing. Some offers are traps. Some smiles are masks. Some hands that reach out to help are really reaching to control. And if you're not awake, if you're not aware, you will invite the very thing that was sent to destroy your peace. This world is spiritual before it's anything else. Energy is exchanged before words are ever spoken. You are either protecting your space, or you're letting something else occupy it. There is no neutral ground. You've got to decide that your spirit, your energy, your purpose, are too valuable to gamble with. Start questioning what's being handed to you. Start observing what's being said behind the kindness. Trust what your gut tells you before your mind talks you out of it. Because when you walk in awareness, you don't just survive, you own the room. You shift atmospheres. You interrupt manipulation. and you block witchcraft before it even has a chance to knock. Never let politeness silence your discernment. Never let fear of judgment make you accept what you know doesn't belong. The most powerful people in the room are not the loudest. They're the ones who see everything, say little, and move with intention. Be that person. Protect your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. Stay sharp, stay sacred, stay free.